My name is Bob Liff, and this is the CUNY Forum, a town meeting that brings prominent New Yorkers together with faculty and students of the Edward T. Rogowski Internship Program in Government and Public Affairs. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, as Mark Twain may or may not have said, depending on who you ask. And the activism around the Gaza war on CUNY and other campuses across the city and country carries echoes of the time when I went to Brooklyn College in the late 1960s, when the Vietnam War drew widespread protests. That political activism continued through the decades, dealing with apartheid in South Africa, the Central American wars of the 1980s, the Iraq War in the 1990s, or more recently, the Muslim immigration bans proposed by former President and current candidate Donald Trump, thankfully with limited success. This is the third in the series of CUNY Forums talking about the youth vote, and we're here to talk about how life at CUNY for students preparing to enter the adult world raises a political consciousness or does not, with 3 city and state lawmakers who graduated CUNY colleges. For some, that activism translated into electoral politics, particularly relevant this year when a presidential election poses an existential question about the state of our democracy. Queens College graduate Deborah Glick is an assemblywoman representing a broad part of Lower Manhattan. Yudelka Tapia, representing the West Bronx in the State Assembly, grew up in the Dominican Republic, where she headed a national women's organization before moving to New York more than 30 years ago and earning a master's degree in urban policy from Hunter College. And fellow Brooklyn College graduate Shahana Hanif, who represents a Brooklyn district stretching from Kensington through Park Slope to Borough Park, is the daughter of Bangladeshi immigrants and the first Muslim woman elected to the city council after experience as a community organizer and a stint on the staff of the council member she succeeded. Shahana, let me start with you. You kind of became activated partly through your own health crisis.
That's right.
And that carried you through Brooklyn College. Talk about how you became kind of politically aware, politically active, and to what degree Brooklyn College may have played a role in that.
Absolutely, thank you so much. I was 17 when I got diagnosed with lupus, and that catalyzed my activism in a way that, of course, I didn't expect. I had to live my life based on where there was access to medical care. And even though I desperately wanted to leave New York City and go to a school out of state, like many of my friends and peers, the treatment for lupus really forced me to stay in Brooklyn. And I initially was going to go to Hunter College, but I then received a letter from Brooklyn College about a program that would be a jumpstart in a PhD in the sciences. And it was for students of color. And that excited me, and it felt like a calling. It felt like, well, this is meaningful. I'll take this. It was going to be a fully funded program, and we'd have a cohort. And the B11 bus took me to Maimonides, which is where my rheumatologist, nephrologist, endocrinologist, my entire team of specialists were there, and I needed to be able to get to my doctor's appointments. And I needed the bus because I was rejected for paratransit. And so that culminated in the early days of a blog I used to write called Shahana with Lupus, to better understand both the city services and the inaccessibility to city services, and to help my friends understand what I was going through.
Just very briefly, though, when you went to Brooklyn, were you politically active in Brooklyn, or were you so busy taking care of your health issues that you weren't?
I was very politically active. When I started my college career, I was very open about my disabilities, because it was in those early years that I had to get both of my hips replaced. I was somebody who needed to advocate for more time to take exams, to have extensions on reports, and my care was not just simply my medical providers, it was also my friends. And I wanted to be very open about somebody who had just been diagnosed with a debilitating illness that came with needing to get both joints on both sides of my hips replaced, one after the other. And I needed support from people on campus, and that is exactly what I found through the Women's Center, through the disability, the Students for Disability Center, and countless other spaces. And if I didn't share my story, I would be very alienated or abandoned even. And for me, the strength was in being very vulnerable, sharing about disability and really connecting that to the broader school community.
Yudelka, you grew up in the Dominican Republic and were very active in feminist politics. Wound up running, as I understand it, a national women's organization, which I suspect, without making any broad cultural assumptions, was not an easy thing to do. And then you came here and you went to Hunter College. Talk a little bit about your political awakening, if you will, and to what degree getting a master's, going to Hunter College after having lived in the Dominican Republic, how that all works
Thank you
out.
for having us today here, Tommy, talking to the young people. I mean, but how we actually have done this over the years. But yes, I was raised in the Dominican Republic with organizers, parents. That's what I did. My father fought in the resistance of the invasion of the Yankees in 1965, and that's what I grew up around. Seeing my uncles, my grandmother, everybody was fighting for the community that we live, a very poor community. I was raised in a very poor family, but I mean, I believe that education was the equalizer. My mother got to go to the 6th grade only, but she said that the only thing that she could leave to us, we are 4, 1 brother and 3 sisters, was the education, go to college, go to the university, because I mean, she never got the chance. Nobody in my family got a chance, but us. So I mean, yes, all of us graduated from college, that I can say. And all of us are doing good because my mother believed in that. And so when I got the opportunity to come to this country, I mean, after fighting in the DR for women's, or for not only for women's, all of corrections, because I mean, we have a very government that was very oppressive. I mean, democracy was not what people think that it was in that time in the DR. It was not like that. So, and I was a young girl, but I mean, I was around the adults all the time, trying to get things, because I graduated from college before coming here, because I got to college when I was 15. So I started early, the fight. And I was able to create and go around the whole island, organizing women's to be participant and to understand how important it was not only to vote and to participate, but understand that they also have rights and that they have to fight for that. And I did that before coming here. So when I got here, and education was a big issue also in the art. So when I got here, I found that when I moved to the Bronx when I got here. So I found that we continue having the same issues that I was fighting for in the Dominican Republic. But it was a different dimension, of course, but it was the same thing. We needed good schools. We needed, I mean, good jobs. We needed to go to school, to college. I mean, we have all the things. We need a place to live. And all of those things were the things that I was fighting in the art. So I just said, okay, I had to continue doing the same thing here. So that's how I did it. And I went to learn the little bit of English that I know. I always said that I don't know English yet.
You're doing great.
I went to public schools with my first sons. I mean, being pregnant with my first son, and then I transferred I went to Bronx Community College to learn a little bit of English. And then when my children were just grown enough that I could live at home, I went to Hunter College and did my master's degree in public urban policy and leadership. And I got very cum laude. And I did it because I had the time to do it, and I had the passion, and I did that because, I mean, those were the things that I was fighting here, and I thought, okay, let's gonna put a title to that, because I've been fighting for affordable housing. I've been fighting for all of the things that had to do with the urban city that we live in. So let's do a title to that, and that's why I went and did urban policy and leadership at Hunter College, and it was the best decision that I did at that time.
Deborah, you and I are peers in terms of age, And we look at what's going on college campuses. City College here, as of the day we're taping, the encampments have been cleared by the police department with the, both private and city college administrations seeking police help in clearing those. There are echoes for when we grew up with the anti-war protests, with takeover of buildings at Brooklyn College, at Queens College. We thought we knew everything. And, for me, I now know I knew nothing. And there are echoes. I mean, when you look at what's going on, what does our experience tell you in looking at this?
Well, I think that there was a tremendous amount of general activism at the time, not just anti-war, but it was in the late 60s. Women didn't have the right to choose. That was part of my activism. It wasn't at the end of 1969. It was the LGBTQ
Emergence. Right.
with Stonewall. So there was a tremendous amount of energy around rights in general, rights for women, rights for minorities, voting rights. We were living through the assassination of Martin Luther King. We had the shock in 1963, very formative for many of us, the assassination of President Kennedy. And I think that our generation felt a responsibility to sort of right the ship, as it were, because there were all of these, there was what Dwight Eisenhower had warned us about, the military-industrial complex, and we felt very committed to expanding the rights for people, but also trying to assert a different pathway. And, the first Earth Day was 1970. So there was activism on all of these fronts, and it was very exciting, and it was a very hopeful time in many ways, because we could see that we could make change. We saw that there were things that were, because in 1970, New York State did change abortion laws before the Supreme Court. So I think that for us, we felt, I think Bobby Kennedy spoke to, and Martin Luther King spoke to us about the need to unite across all different divisions and to be united in a new way of approaching civic discourse. So I think that was, a part of it. And I think that the other underlying thing was there was a draft. So people of our age, men, were at risk of being drafted and being sent off to war. And I think that was a very present danger for a lot of people. So it was a very different, energized time. And I think that today, I think it's coming out of a malaise more than a sense of energy. People are trying to pull together and harness that energy. But I think that, Trump did a lot of damage. And I think that we're all kind of depressed about the future. And this is an attempt, I think, to, again, in some way right the ship. But the danger that I see, because it was the danger we created, was we created chaos and the country reacted by electing Richard Nixon. And I think that my personal terror is that the current sense of disorder, which of course he was the leader of disorder. He led the biggest disorder one could ever have imagined, the attack on the Capitol. But that has ramifications in the public, and this sense of disorder that also comes out of the pandemic, I'm terrified will give us back an authoritarian.
Let me ask, you two, in terms of looking at, what we went through, and I agree pretty much with everything she said, that when you see young people, CUNY people, other young people facing an election, many of whom are probably empathetic to the underlying cause of the protests going on campuses, but that the cost of that disorder, which we know in 1968 led to the defeat of Hubert Humphrey and the election of Richard Nixon, could do the same this year. I mean, that's a tough that's kind of a mature calculation that I don't know I was prepared to make in 1968.
We didn't.
Right, but I mean, for both of you, how do you see young people reacting to, with these countervailing forces, if you will?
Well, if you see, I mean, you're going to see that there's different ways that they are seeing at that. I mean, there are plenty of them that understand that this election might be the most consequential election that we ever had. I mean, and forget about Richard Nixon, because
We
Richard
can't,
Nixon.
but go ahead.
No, because I mean, Richard Nixon at least has some type of principles, but this one that we're talking about doesn't have any principles.
That's right.
Right.
So I mean, I say that it's more. It's going to be the most consequential because of that. And if we continue to pay attention to all the nonsenses that are being talked about around, we are in a very serious time to do making real tough decision, and we have to know if we actually going to say, okay, let's gonna save democracy, or we're just gonna be angry because something is not being done, and we're gonna make the wrong decision. I think, I mean, that young people are way very smart to understand exactly what is going on, and I bet that the majority of these ones that are here are registered to vote already. And they know that the decision that they made and the vote that they put out there is gonna be consequential for the rest of the life that we have for our democracy and for our country. So I think, I mean, they're taking it seriously too, which this is the way that we have to take it. But I mean, I'm scared, like my friend is.
Shahana, if you look at the Democratic primaries around the country, and these are primaries, these are not general elections where you have to make an ultimate choice. There was a significant kind of, I'm going to vote for somebody other than Biden to send a signal. In New York, there were significant, thousands of votes, thousands of ballots were left blank in the Democratic Party. There's no question that Biden was going to win the primary. And frankly, the areas where there were the most of those blank votes were in districts like in Western Queens and parts of Brooklyn, where you have a lot of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America candidates doing very well. You talk to young people. I mean,
I am a young people.
You are a young people. And I mean, so when you look at this and you face, whether it's a lesser of two evils, however you want to see it, these kinds of elections are a zero-sum game. So, are you going to give a protest vote to a Bobby Kennedy or a Jill Stein, or are you going to say, okay, the game is between Trump and Biden?
I mean, we really need to acknowledge that the discussion or the debate can't be flattened in the way you've just described, that we have to pick the lesser of two evils. Yes, we recognize that there's something at the end of a certain timeline impending. However, what students are doing and what even many elected officials who've called for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, who've been consistently talking about the way in which the NYPD works very closely and gets trained with support from Israel, all of these ties, asking for transparency and wanting accountability from our government is a right that we have. Wanting to participate in a democracy is a right that we have, and it's the strength of New York City that we get to be able to challenge who's in office. What we were able to accomplish with the Leave It Blank campaign, which I was one of the endorsers of, I participated in it, parts of my district, which overlaps with Congressional District 10, which is Congressmember Goldman, in large swaths came out and left their ballot blank. I'm not a DSA candidate. I did not get the DSA endorsement. And so I want to be clear that our constituents are rightfully feeling demoralized by Biden and his lack of response, the way in which the Muslim and Palestinian community have not received the same kind of humanity in which rightfully our Israeli families and Jewish families of hostages have received mourning and grief from our elected leaders, from all the way from the president to our mayor. And that is having an impact on all of us, right? But I just want to wrap up by saying we must challenge the Democratic Party. As a Democrat, I say that. Of course, as I'm having conversations with my parents who, in my community, which is the largest Bangladeshi immigrant community in Brooklyn, which often from my district gets erased because I have Park Slope and Carroll Gardens. This constituency came out in large numbers for my election. So I also see that the new leadership that has emerged from down ballot races in our city alone has really impacted the way that we're engaging in this necessary discourse.
Certainly nobody is questioning the right of people to cast no ballots, and nobody, you can vote, you can vote for whoever you want. The question is, it's harder for young people, and I say this because this was true for me, to understand the longer term consequences of the ultimate vote that, what I couldn't necessarily, I could see, I guess, but, looking back, that, I can't say it made no difference whether Hubert Humphrey or Richard Nixon won. I can't say it makes no difference whether Joe Biden or Donald Trump wins, especially about communities that I care about helping and assisting and, bringing resources to, and however, whatever else the political system is supposed to move, it's supposed to do in a progressive direction. So it's not a question of a right. It's a question of can younger people, can CUNY students who are entering the real world,
We're living in the real world, Bob.
Right.
Over 40,000 Palestinians have now been killed. And we are live streaming a unfolding genocide. Now TikTok is going to be banned as a result of the circulation of what some would call it in the past that the revolution would not be televised. We are now witnessing a televised, whether you call it a war, a genocide, the brutality, the wiping away of generations of family. And CUNY students here care. CUNY students here care. When I was on Brooklyn College campus, I cared then too. Growing up in Brooklyn and being from the Bangladeshi and Muslim community, and particularly being catalyzed, of course my health issue was an impetus to the health-wide activism that I'm involved in and the disability justice work I do. But the original direction for my activism was 9/11. The way in which informants were sent to communities like mine, NYPD using people who look like us to come into our mosques on CUNY campuses. Once I graduated, I learned that there was an informant who joined our Muslim Student Association. The vile abuse of power that administration after administration has administered with the Democratic Party brand has actually harmed us. So we need to challenge. I recognize this sort of there's going to be a far evil outcome if we end up getting Trump in office. We've experienced that, and the Muslim community suffered. That also was why I started working in government, right? I didn't think my path would take me into government, but my predecessor, former Councilmember Brad Lander, brought me in when Trump got elected, because guess what? Even in that moment, when you look at who's working in government, how many Muslims are staff members? How many South Asians in densely populated South Asian communities in New York City do we have in working in elected offices? And are they just simply liaisons, or are they budget directors and policy directors? Are we putting people who look like us, CUNY students, in the workforce to build the bench that we need for the future of this city, which I believe, and why I decided to run for the council was because I deeply believe in the possibility and the fight for an anti-racist feminist democracy. I ran the entire campaign on, we must win a feminist governing model. We must unite our issues around a feminist uprising, because we saw what happened during COVID. Women were impacted. There was no childcare access. We have to connect these issues constantly, and that's what I've seen with CUNY students.
There are echoes from the 1960s in that, forced to make a choice. I mean, talk about history rhyming, the Democratic Convention is in Chicago this year, which was a disaster in 1968 with Mayor Daley unleashing, kind of grotesque levels of force. But what do you say to young people about the choice they're going to face?
Well, first of all, I don't think you win elections saying the other guy is bad, and that's going to do it. You have to have somebody to vote for. And I happen to think that President Biden has done if you think of the level of dysfunction that exists now, a paralyzed House of Representatives where they can't even keep the same guy in speakership for more than 6 months at a time, to be able to have done the kind of bipartisan legislation is pretty incredible on things like lowering drug prices for seniors, which is really important. Getting veterans who have been exposed to toxic waste while they were serving, to give them the opportunity for a fair shake, for all of the work on, look, he's tried to eliminate student debt, which was part of the financial industry deciding that this was a really great group of people to suck their money out of. And he tried, the Supreme Court, the rigged Supreme Court, has pushed him back, but he's trying. The entire infrastructure and green jobs, the CHIP Act, there are real policy things. But I will just say this about elections. Democrats are always cerebral. Here are all of the great things that have been done. Democrats, and I say this to Republicans all the time, what have Democrats given you? Oh, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, voting rights, abortion rights. What have Republicans given us? They've taken away this right, that right. What is the deal? And the deal is that they are not speaking with logic and reason. It's about the emotional content. This society has become a celebrity culture. And this guy was a celebrity. And
Literally.
and is a joke, let alone a joker. And that appeals emotionally to a lot of people in this country, especially older men who identify with him and think, oh, I'd like to be able to get away with the stuff he's gotten away with.
Yep.
He's had all these mistresses. I wish I could have done that. He's cheated on his taxes. I wish I could have done that. He's been able to, have these businesses that suck money out of people and then go bankrupt, and he's still skating along. So it's an emotional content.
Right, but what I was talking to Shahana about, and what I want to also bring Yudelka in on this, is how the choice that especially CUNY students who are going to have to live with the impact of this decision. And you cannot downplay. I'm going to use the word emotional, but I don't mean that in a to kind of belittle the real passion. You have to deal with the impact, both of the war and the reaction to the protests. They have to live with this decision. So, I mean, what do you...
I have great faith that in the end, students who have gotten an education at CUNY will do an analysis and they will think about what their future would be and that they would like this not to be the last election in America. And that, I think, I have confidence in young people. I think they're smart. I think they understand that at the end of the day, there's a higher risk, especially for them. They will have to live with it longer than I will, but I have, nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews, and I don't want to see them facing a world where we know what Trump did, and I think that students understand you don't agree with everything that somebody's done, but you look at the totality, and I think young people are going to make the right decision.
I have faith. I have faith that they're going to make the right decision because, I mean, this election, like I said before, is going to have greatest consequences. And young people will have the opportunity now. And I think, I mean, that they're thinking about it because, I mean, they are CUNY students. And in CUNY, all you talk about is democracy. Is how you're gonna put that forward. How you're gonna fight for this and how you're gonna fight for that. And now is the time to fight for democracy in this country. And I think, I mean, they're seeing that, and that part of the responsibility is falling on them. And they have, if they don't do if they don't protect our democracy, there's gonna be a price that all of us going to be paying.
Well, they already have,
yeah,
because of the Supreme Court, less rights than their mothers did. So, and that's quite, as they say in the business, quite a slippery slope. Tell us your name and tell us your campus, please.
Collie Graham, Borough Manhattan Community College. My question is, with the activism y'all have done and y'all see the state of what is going on now in the world, how you think youth can better fix things now so it won't end up worse than it's kind of getting already?
When you say it won't get worse, in what sense?
In my sense, is like the overturn of Roe versus Wade, affirmative action, and now you got laws Biden trying to do better, but now Trump with his issues. How do you feel the youth can counteract that with their voting?
So, I mean, but at the same time, the kind of sitting out the primary is different than the general election. It's not the ultimate choice, but the Leave It Blank campaign. Is there a Leave It Blank campaign coming in November because of the kind of consequences that we've been talking about, that he was talking about?
I mean, the sooner our campus administrators, this mayor, elected leaders within the Democratic Party extend a proactive and a compassionate hand of wanting to engage and not just send in police and riot gear, we can get a lot done. Right now, what we've witnessed over the last several days, and I've been at the Columbia encampment that first weekend. Last night I was at the NYU encampment. What this administration and the college presidents, at least here, because we also know that presidents across universities, some have called in police, others have, like Brown University, that their president has engaged in good faith discussion and they arrived to an agreement and a healthy debate. We are witnessing right now authoritarianism in our city. So of course I'm thinking about the general election, and I have a big role because I'm the first Muslim woman. I'm one of 2 South Asians in a city that has the largest Bangladeshi community, our Dunkins, our Uber drivers. I am, I represent the 39th district, but I'm somebody very sort of prominent within this, not to brag, but like prominent to really push for our community's civic engagement power. and to recognize that voting is one of our many powers as constituents of New York City.
So is withholding your vote.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we've already been living under tyranny. Mayor Adams has made it very challenging. In my first year, you saw the depletion and the divestments from education, from elementary schools, which we're still trying to restore. Right now with some restoration for childcare. So all I want to get at is that we can't just simply look at the 2024 general as this sort of impending doomsday event that's going to happen, and we're all sort of going to, somehow something happens and then the chapter of our story ends. Because we've seen it over and over. I was not politically engaged up until, this political engagement, that is, the electoral work, until Trump won. And my community, from when I was 10 years old, when 9/11 happened, up until my early 20s, we were organizing. We were witnessing the ways in which Muslim kids in Kensington, in Jackson Heights, Parkchester, were organizing to keep our families safe, to make sure that we had a childhood. And so we weren't voting then, but we used the power of our organizing, we used the power of civic engagement, whether that be through participatory budgeting, that has been a tremendous success in my district, and other ways to really bring people in. Communities like mine and many others, and including some of the folks who are participating in these protests, have been disenfranchised and sort of abandoned by the Democratic Party. I'm now working with Brooklyn Young Democrats, others who have put out a powerful response to supporting student protests, nonviolent protests, criticizing whatever bad acts of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, but also enshrining the fact that we must not fall for authoritarianism, and applaud Mayor Adams and presidents across universities for sending in droves and droves of police officers without any evidence of what it was that caused that disproportionate response.
I would like to broaden a little bit the conversation about what the Callie, I think is
Colin.
Callie, asked, with the loss of Roe v. Wade, what can we do? I was very happy that in 2019, my bill, the Reproductive Health Act, enshrined Roe v. Wade in New York state law. But in November, we are going to have on the ballot that you can vote for a New York State constitutional amendment that is an equality amendment that strengthens voting rights, that strengthens reproductive rights, that reaches out. What can we do? We can do more to ensure that there's clean water. We just fought to get back in the state budget $250 million for clean water, so that it's the full $500 million, so that storm resilience. These are real issues. We live in communities that got flooded. People had died in some communities. So those are things that we can do to make things better, that can engage young people because they care about the environment. They care about health care. They care about affordable housing. And those are bread and butter issues, what we used to call kitchen tabletop issues, that motivate people. Young people want the same things that their parents wanted. They wanted a good job that they could provide for themselves, that they could have a good place to live, that the roof wasn't falling in on them, that the environment was clean. And those are things that we're working on, that we have made strides. The governor, though we don't always agree, has been a little bit more cooperative than the last governor. And we've been able to do things that I think are positive investments in young people. And, I'm horrified that CUNY costs as much as it does, because when we went, it didn't.
It did.
It was free.
And my first bus ride to Albany was our position, no tuition.
I love that. I love that.
And I think that while we provide, we expanded TAP, we raised the minimum amount you could get, and we raised the family income. We are making it possible for more people, young people, to go to school and have less debt. And the president is working to expunge debt.
To expunge all the debt.
Because they had a higher rate of interest on their student loans, federal student loans, than they should have.
Yes, sir. Tell us your name and your campus, please.
My name is Samuel. I'm a graduate student from Baruch. I graduated from Queens College. My question is, what will you say to many students and young people who are becoming very apathetic to the political process?
Apathetic or alienated? It's kind of this, it's kind of two sides of the same coin.
I think, that yes, and we understand that because, they tire all the fight and we're not getting together and united and fighting together, because, when we fight together and we work together, we always win the fights that we do. But, this is not what's happening now. Everybody's fighting in different ways. And I guess that they are tired and they are also, I think, a little bit scared of being participating in something that they don't know what is going to be the outcome at the end of the day, but actually yes, like Deb said, we're changing things. We are putting resources in things that are very important to young people and to our families, because the majority of the things that we fight for is because we need a good job that our parents can raise their children and their family with dignity, and then be able to go to school, and then be able to have a fresh air and fresh water. And all of those things are the things that they're gonna inherit, that we are fighting for now, and they should be part of it. And I think, that's part of the thing that we've been doing, and that's how we're changing.
I also, I've also thought, one of the huge differences from when we grew up and today is, when I grew up in New York City, there were 7 newspapers, 7 daily English language newspapers. There were Spanish papers, there were Russian papers, Italian papers. There was the Yiddish paper. The forward was still in Yiddish, and they were ideologically different, but they all agreed on the same facts.
Exactly.
And now, with the technological revolution, kind of segmenting the audience, if you will, we, including me, are all in our own silos, and we don't even agree on the same facts, which is necessary in order to find common ground, if you want to find common ground. And frankly, I don't see that changing. And that's what, that's kind of what scares me the most, is how do you reach out? Frankly, when you're young, again, you think you know everything. And now I know nothing. But if you're only talking to yourself, how do you reach to build a coalition?
Well, there is a coalition. I don't want folks who are tuned in and the young people who are joining us today to think that there's this anarchy. I think what we're witnessing, because of the way in which journalism has shifted as a result of Elon's X or Twitter, whatever you call it, we are witnessing this journalism, or how social media has kind of warped reality, the use of AI, bots, trolls. Just yesterday, one of my colleagues responded in solidarity with the students who were arrested, and the chief of the NYPD, who has a premium account, responded. Why does he have a premium account? Many of us electeds don't even have a premium account. And wrote a whole essay inciting violence. We're witnessing, again, what I feel and seeing with this current administration, which I've been very publicly critical about, is authoritarianism and this sort of my way or the highway. We've had several Muslim staff members in the administration who have spent over a decade in the administration get fired without any justification. So things are happening that are really kind of making all of us really uncomfortable. But I chose to be in the city council because I believe in relationship building. I love my community. I have walked every part of my district so many times. And I've engaged in the very difficult conversations. After October 7th, many of my Jewish constituents, whether they affiliate with Jewish Voice for Peace or JFREJ or are Zionist and want to understand why I said what I said. I've met with every single batch of constituents that wanted to meet with me. That's my responsibility. That's why I decided to run for office. I know what the job entails, but I also know that this isn't to just have people who agree with me, and it's also for constituents so that maybe your council member, your elected official won't agree with you. But are we going to participate in a democracy? That's for me the foundation of this. And I wanna uphold that, I wanna continue to affirm that and make sure that others in my community know that.
Is this technological revolution, however, in terms of people stuck in their silos, is that damaging democracy?
Well, I think the manipulation of information, however it's done, is very concerning. And we've seen foreign actors trying to damage, and we saw, there are people who are currently under indictment for their activity working with other
Meaning
governments,
Russians.
Other countries.
with Russians, to undermine the last, the election before that. And so there are great concerns. We grew up when there were like 3 TV networks.
That's right.
The guys at night, and it was guys, were the
them
voice. We had a shared reality. And what we've had are people who stand up and say, there are alternative facts. No, there are not alternative facts. Facts are empirical. You may have a different opinion. You may have a different perspective on those facts. But the fact is, this is a table. It's not an aardvark. And we have to find a way to get back to understanding that there are certain basic realities. Our experience of reality is different. Our opinions are different. But there are certain empirical realities that we have to face. And we have somebody who's saying, well, I'm not, America has survived on the peaceful transfer of power. That is what is the heart of democracy. And I would say that Richard Nixon actually did try to subvert the Constitution. It was Republicans that went to him and said, we are going to toss your behind out that's why he resigned.
Yep.
Because that party, his own party, said, this is a bridge too far. We do not have a shared reality. And I think that media has, writ large, not necessarily intentionally, but the way in which it devolves is problematic. But we put in the new budget
Yes.
a tax credit for local journalism so that they
Which
can
has a special interest I applaud you
Yeah.
for.
so they can hire reporters, and we will give them a tax credit for half of the salary
$90 million.
so that we can have people on the ground in our communities who can actually talk to people and report on the ground so that it's not, Sinclair Corporation.
It is. I want to go back, but it is stunning. This is speaking to someone who was a reporter for 21 years, that there are so many cities in this country now, which, certainly mid-sized cities which have no newspaper. Cities where, like
Right.
like New Orleans, where the Times-Picayune doesn't publish every day. So, there are strikes going on now, or there's labor negotiation. There was a strike at Gannett-owned papers in upstate New York. It's just a very depressing for me, for somebody who believes in public debate, that, I think what you did there was critical. Yes, sir. Your name and your campus, please.
My name is Chris Sambora. I am a John Jay College of Criminal Justice student. I'm a junior. And the question is that, do you guys believe that elected officials should help the people? Because apart from the protests that's currently happening between the Jews and Palestinians, but it's all the things that people need to worry about. In case for migration still exists. I don't know if you guys remember, but last year, beginning this year, Mayor Adam closed down a prostitution ring in Jackson Heights, but it continues to exist. You guys believe that election officials should do more to help the people who come from migration, from Venezuela, from Africa? You guys believe that they should do more to help those people to get educated and not be in that life, in sexual trafficking or apart from that? So, yeah.
First of all, I think that the great thing about one of the things that we have fought for is public education. That
$35 billion.
every child has the right to go to school for free. That is, now some parents may choose to send their kids to private school, but it is the basic. And we have fought many battles in Albany to prevent draining off money for private schools, because you want a private education, God bless, you pay for it. But we believe that an education for everyone who comes here is the number one thing, that their children get educated, that they get educated. And frankly, when I was growing up, the high school across the street was busy every night. I don't see that now. We had, and it was a wide range of things. The gym was open, there were music, there was English language learners. That should be, every school should be a community school.
Community school.
And we have an obligation to, this country has always been about immigration. And the shocking thing is, and we had a debate on this on the floor, and I said that from my district, you can see the Statue of Liberty. She holds a torch, she holds a tablet, she does not have a ladder behind her pulling up the ladder of success. That should be open to everyone. And we do, and we are trying to do more to make it possible. But that's about making certain there isn't discrimination, and that we have to fix immigration so that the system makes sense. Right now, it doesn't make sense for most people.
We only have about 5 minutes left. Let me get one other question in. Tell us your name and campus and speak up.
Hi, my name is Camilo Flores, and I'm a student at College of Staten Island. My question is more of a personal experience, so I need to explain a little bit of background. I live in Brooklyn, and I went to school in Kingsborough Community College, and I went to CSI, and it was a whole cultural shock. A lot of people over there are Republican, and being a Democrat and dealing with Republican, especially Staten Island being Republican, there's a disconnect. How do you think we can, resume the conversation with this sort of people, especially when there's so much political disconnect and it's so controversial these days, being a Democrat and being a Republican?
How do you begin the conversation? Because the conversation is broken. And, it's how do you reach across lines? And especially, frankly, in the sense of...
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen more.
Yeah, I think so. But I think we got some type of conversation. In Albany, we discuss with the other side all the time, and when we have bills, we discuss the bills, we debate the bills, and this is a way of having a conversation. But of course, it's difficult when you try to put a conversation with somebody that is just going back, and just following, conspiracy theories and all these things that we know are not true. That there's no way that you can discuss that type of thing. So it's a little, but I think the conversation is there, because we always looking for the way, because like Hanif said, it's now our way or the highway. That's not the way we take it.
And respect.
Go ahead.
It's respect.
It's respect, yeah.
You have to, and individuals can find it better than a group. It's been difficult in some places if you try to start a conversation and 6 people who feel very emotional start yelling at you or not,
I will
need
tell
to
you.
be respectful and individual.
Now I'm a Democrat. When I covered City Hall, I love talking to Republicans because I might actually learn something. So, you know, and people I did not agree with, but I respected
Yeah.
who they were. Ernesto Malave Jr. runs the internship program and is a, I believe, John Jay graduate. So,
Alum, yes. Ernesto Malave Jr. The last time I asked the question was in 1998 as a student. But wanted to ask each of you if there was one skill that you learned as students that carried over into your work as elected officials, what skill would that be?
and we only have about 2 minutes left, so do that quickly if you would. Go ahead.
I think, I mean, that the best service is relationships. I think, I mean, that we could do great things when you have the ability to have relationships with everyone that you cross to. And I think, I mean, having the relationship is the way that you go and you talk about issues and you talk, but you have to create the relationship and being open to have that relationship with anyone, everybody.
Go ahead.
So I would say step up when no one is, or you might be the only one, but do it. And then 2, writing. We need strong writers in government, from elected officials to our staff members, and writing is a craft that you must be disciplined in practicing.
I think thinking critically and analyzing information and being able to articulate it in a way, whether it's written or verbal. Those are the communication skills, analyzing and communication skills.
Relationship.
Do you believe, quick answer, do you believe that young people will vote in November, and will they vote for one of the 2 major parties?
Absolutely.
So you think they'll vote
Yeah,
for either Biden
absolutely.
or Trump? So
Absolutely.
I think that there will be some that will choose a third party,
that's a,
but I do think
Go ahead.
that they'll vote.
I think, I mean, that they're going to come out and vote, and they're going to vote Democrat because that's the only chance that we have to maintain our democracy.
I always try to make that line. There's a 0 on the time clock. Thank you all. This is very spirited, and you know, let me urge all these CUNY students and young people to vote. So, thank you.